Hey everybody, VR Boomer here, and welcome to part 2 of our one-part series covering making a joystick into a set of rudder pedals. In this video, we're going to go over how to hook up the brakes, but before we get to that, I'm going to show you a quick improvement I made to this design, and I'm also going to cover another alternate method of doing these wires. So let's get building, okay? The first thing I want to talk about in this video is a little bit of an improvement I made. I found this was sliding around on the floor. I have a wooden floor and one of those hard plastic chair mats underneath my desk, and it was scooting around a bit. So I added a little bit of traction-y material to the bottom here. I happen to have this shelf material, like grippy rubber, and I just craft sprayed and stuck it on, and that works fine. You can use just about anything for this. If you have an old pair of sneakers you're throwing away, you could cut chunks of rubber and glue them on. You could use like bathroom traction stickers. Whatever you want, just add a little bit of grip to the bottom. All right, now I went over in the last video how to attach these rods, so moving the rudder pedals would move the joystick. And afterwards, I think I came up with what might be a better method of doing it, and I'm going to walk through that. I'm going to install it on here. I'm not going to remove these, but I'm going to walk through how to do it, and that is using just regular picture hanging wire. So what we're going to do is put a hole on each one of these, run the wire through the middle here somewhere, one in front, one in back. I might go from the back to the front to the back and then do it that way. I think that might give better torque action. So let's get on with that. First things first, we need to go back to the selection of drill bits and find ourselves an appropriately sized drill bit for this wire, which is going to be very small. The one through here can be a little bit bigger. Actually, these can be a little bit oversized. We don't want to go too small. We want plenty of room to run the wire through. But we're going to be using hot glue to anchor it in place. So it doesn't have to be a perfectly tight fit. All right, load our drill bit in. You know, let's just drill all 4 holes right now. There's no reason not to. Let's say, you know, on the front part, we can come fairly far forward because it's only this area here where we need room for the feet. So let's go way up here. Way up here. The farther out we get with these openings, the more leverage it's going to be able to apply. Now back here, we want room for our foot to be right around here. So this one I'm going to keep a little bit closer to where this one is. I don't know if these are going to get in the way of each other or not, but you know what? We will discover this together. Well, by that I mean I'm going to discover it now while I'm doing the build, and you're going to discover it when you watch the video. All right, we need a forward axis. It's going to come off here. Let's go right up to here. This actually juts further forward from the axis here, so that'll give us the most leverage away from the center point. Let's see if we can just go right through here, huh? Whoops. I'm going to try and keep it centered. Here we go. Get that hole. One wire. Let's just straighten the end out a little bit. It's going to go right through there. This is going to feed to these aft holes. I think that's going to give us the most torque. After I get this done, I may actually cut the other ones off. We'll see how tight I can get this. This is going to be the trick, is being able to really tighten these. So let's see where we can go with that before we make any final decisions. So we got to cut another length of wire here. This stuff is super inexpensive. It's available everywhere. We want to run a little bit more than we're going to need on each side. This is like 30 feet, so this is way more than we're ever going to need. We want to, once again, grab our nice heavy-duty cutting pliers there. Now, where do we want to put the hole for the aft one? I've got a hole here that I was using for something else, but this is almost right on top of the axis. And we want it as far this way as we can get it, behind that axis point. And, you know, honestly, like right there where we have those rods is the best spot. But maybe, baby, we can come right behind that. What do you think? Alternately, we could put like an eye. Hold that thought. I have these really small screw eyes. And if we come off of here with a screw eye that's going to bring us further this way, that's going to give us even more leverage. Let's try that. Go to a smaller drill bit here. You guys are discovering the iteration process along with me. So let us try just above, I'm going just above where the wires are coming out. And I'm doing it right on the central line. It's a little tricky because the seam of the plastic is right along that line. I am hoping that the hot glue will do enough to anchor this in place that it's not going to yoink out. It feels like positive engagement there. Yeah, that's nice. And we'll screw that all the way in. That's solid. And the trick is, these I was just going to hot glue, but I think now this is interesting. I could go sideways with this and just run it through like that, and like that. Or I could try and tie the wire off on here. Which I think is what we're going to do. I'm just going to go through and make a knot right about the halfway, just a little loop, not actually a knot. Okay. Don't. Yes, I do actually say don't as part of my regular vocabulary. Now what we have to do is tighten these down, and we're going to start with this one here. Get it as tight as we can. Oops. It's starting to pull that one. Where'd that one go? And keep it about medium. We want to snug it nice and tight. I wonder if that needs to be, you know what? I think that needs to be anchored up there as well. So let's actually crisscross like this. That's going to give us a nice solid anchor point for each of them. That's better. And then down here is where we're going to be applying the tension. So let's use a little bit of hot glue to anchor these in place right now. There and right there. And we probably don't even need it, but let's drop a little bit of hot glue right here just to anchor that nice and tight there. Okay, so now we can pull that nice and snug. And what we're going to do is throw a clamp on here. Got my mini clamps. I had the bigger clamps the other day. I'm not sure these are going to be really strong enough to do what we need to do, but hey, we'll try. And now we're doing the back ones. So we're going to do this one next. Going to pull that nice and tight. And again, you want to make sure that you're not tractioning the handle one way or the other. I don't know how tight is going to be tight enough for these. You can use this to torque. And then actually I need to move out a little bit here so I've got room to clamp. You can't quite see what I'm doing. I'm just off camera here. Probably like metal clamps would be better for this. Something with a little more oomph than these plastic ones. That's fairly tight. Let's see if we can yank on this one a little bit more. Just a little bit more traction. You can leverage to pull. See, when I do that, I noticed it was starting to, yeah, when I pull really hard, it's starting to pull the handle that way, which we don't want. We'll keep it right at that. We'll put the clamp on that. It seems fairly straight. All right. Now you could pause right here and hot glue up those and wait to do the other one if you want. So we're just going to put that up against the little hole and just pump some hot glue into that opening. Just to fill up that. That's why we're actually going a little oversized with the holes. It gives us room to fill that up with some hot glue. All right, let's do the forward ones. Or the other ones. They're not really the forward ones. I mean, they're the forward part of the brace, but the aft part of the joystick. So there we are, I guess. So I'm working on a tiny little corner of my workbench right here. My makeshift workbench. See, that is bumping up against that. Oh. See, this is actually good, I think. They're bumping up against each other. Again, like with these other ones, you could always add a little wire there to get them to bite together a touch. All right. Let's see if we can get a good grip on this. Pull it nice and tight. All right. That seems secure. Let's see if we can't clamp that in place. And now we'll come over to this side and do this likewise over here. I am feeling like this will be easier to install and get right for someone who has less mechanical skill or is less experienced in building and making. Let's put it that way. Because trying to get those rods aligned is a little fiddly. This, I think, is just going to be easier. I don't know. This one, I could have gotten this one a little tighter, I think. But let's hot glue these and see where we are. I honestly don't know if this is actually going to work or not as a method of turning, and I'm reticent to remove the clothes hanger wire because that is working. And if I cut that off, it is going to be a royal pain in the ass to put it back on if it turns out these don't work. See, this side feels nice and tight. That one's maybe not quite tight enough. It's a little hard to say. Anyway, I just thought I would go over that. That's my alternate method of doing that. You can run the wires front to back, front to back. You could go front through the middle to the back, front through the middle to the back. I'm not quite sure which one is going to give you the best results. But I just thought I would share this with you. All right, now we're going to get on to wiring up the brakes. All right, welcome to my very messy hobby room. We're going to do the wiring now for the brakes. So the first thing I did is all of these other switches here, I just taped them out of the way for now. I'm going to attempt to work with those later. I need to try and find a connector I can connect these wires to and extend it out because I don't want them to be permanently attached because this is going to be under my desk. And I'm going to have a box on top of my desk with the switches mounted on it. And I'd like to be able to separate them just to make things a little more convenient. So these are just getting taped out of the way for right now. We've got brown and orange on this side, red and yellow on this side. Now, I do a lot of little electronic stuff, so I just happen to have wires of a similar gauge and the right color. Color does not matter at all, in case you were curious. I just happen to have it, so I used it. Gauge matters a little bit. You want to kind of keep them in the same ballpark. They don't have to be exactly the same, but you don't want like heavy household wire using there. That's going to put up too much resistance and it's not going to work as well. Now, trimming wires these small, getting the insulation off them is really tricky. Most of the wire strippers you buy are just too big to do it. So you have to get a pair of wire cutters and just gently squeeze and peel it off. Now, I will be doing some soldering, but I'm going to show you another way to do this that I actually like a little bit better. For this part, onto the switches, I'm going to have to solder, although you may not have to if you can find switches that have screw connections. So what these are, I don't know if the camera will focus on this or not. It will not. So these are little insulator tubes with a little glob of solder in the middle. So they will solder and seal and make a nice strong connection. So what you do is you slide this onto your wire. And then you take the end of the wire you want to connect to it. Twist them together a little bit. Little twisted pair action. Well, that's another thing I like to do is twist the wires together. Obviously, it keeps things neater. They did not come twisted together, but you chuck them in the end of a drill and spin the drill a little bit, and it'll twist up nice and easily. So once you've got the wires joined, you want to get both of them in, and you want that joint, I don't know if you'll be able to see this or not, you want where the wires are joined to be right under that ball of solder. And then all you need is just like a lighter and apply a little heat, and you will see the shrink tube shrink and the solder will slag if you don't light it on fire. Ooh, these are delicate. Lit it on fire. How about that? So we're going to let that cool for a second. That was a little too much heat. I'll start working on this side while that one's cooling. And I'm probably going to want to test these. Oops, let's get this onto place. I have another tool other than the lighter that I usually do this with. That's a little less aggressive. Wow, fumble fingers. Big fumble fingers. Cannot get these together to save my life. All right. Slide that over. Line up that seal. Let's see if we can do this without lighting it on fire this time. I'm going to keep this lighter moving a lot so it will melt without burning, hopefully. All right, come on, lead. Come on, solder. The shrinky dink's going. There it goes. All right, we'll let that cool, and I'll do the other two wires, and then we'll come back to attaching it to the switches. Okay, those connections are all completed. Now, as you might expect, we don't want these wires just flip-flopping everywhere. So we want to secure them down to where the switches are. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. Wire ties are cheap, readily available, and easy to use. So I think we're just going to use these for now, especially since I may want to take this apart at some point, make some changes, and these will just cut right off. And actually, as I'm thinking about it, I was thinking about binding these together anyway, so why not use a wire tie for that? It had that kind of stability I was looking for. So we're going to go down here. So I'm going to keep the wire nice and snug. I'll try and move this so everything I'm doing stays in frame here. Or close to in frame. I mean, wire ties aren't exactly rocket science. Snug that up. And we're gonna, there's a lot of different ways we could do this. I think I might actually sneak these through here since they'll fit. Yeah. Yeah, that looks fairly neat. All right, if you've never soldered before, here's a little bit of a crash course. We have cleaned our wire ends here, stripped them off. I'm actually going to get a pair of tweezers here because this is tricky work. We're just going to put the wires in these holes like that. Now, if you're lucky, you can find, or if you go looking a little bit, you can find momentary switches that have screw attachments. So you might not actually have to do any soldering like this. You'll still have to make the connections up there, but you might not have to solder onto your switch. All right, now you need to be very careful with these because this is fairly delicate plastic and you don't want to overheat it. It just takes a little bit. Doink. Like that. And like that. And there it is. The switch is all wired up. If everything works right, I should have right and left independent braking. The micro switches that this use are nothing more than this. So I mentioned it's called a momentary switch, which if you think about it, it's like a doorbell. It's sitting there doing nothing until you push it, and then it rings, and as soon as you let go, it shuts off. That's what a momentary switch is. Those micro switches are momentary switches. You don't have to have a micro switch to use in this kind of a situation. You can use a larger one as long as the wiring's not putting up too much resistance, because this is just checking for an open or closed circuit. The amount of resistance is not as important. And that's that. You know what? I think it's time for a test flight. Let's go try it out. All right, so here we are in the cockpit of the beautiful classic Spitfire. We're going to do a little test run with the rudder pedals. Now let's look, if you look down at the rudder pedals there, you can see as I move them, they move quite freely. Responds really nicely, and the way I've got this set up, these actually move, these glide. They're very nice. So let's look over here. And here's the brake indicator. So starboard brakes works, port brakes, so we've got unequal braking working. And step on both of them to brake. All right, let's recenter. Let's hop outside the cockpit and look at the plane from behind here. And you can see the rudder move. All right, let's see if we can get this bird off the ground. This is a tricky one. So here we go. Let's see if we can get this airborne. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Trick is with these pedals, you need to get a whole new sense of muscle memory, because I'm not used to doing this. No. The right rudder. Prop speed is all the way up. Whoop, whoop. Gear up. Well, any takeoff that you can fly away from is a good one, right? We are airborne. Yay. So the only thing I say that I would like with these rudder pedals would be to have a more positive center point. They move so freely that it's a little hard. There's no feel for when they're centered, because the spring that's in the stick isn't really overcoming the weight of the wooden pedals. So I think I might add some springs to it if I can figure out how to keep them properly squared. All right. Wow, thank you all for watching my fun little video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you find it useful. If you think I could have done something better than you did, please leave a comment down below. If you want to tell me how rubbish that takeoff just was, please leave a comment in the video. And we'll see you next time.